look, it's the beginning of our show that we call Bring It In. And we're joined today by David Thorpe. And it's like old home week. There's John Hollinger. How the heck are you?
What's up, man?
What's up? Judy, should we get the embarrassing part over? Do you want to just show that video right now? Terrible.
Those are the days, guys. Those are the days.
Oh, John looks so severe.
You know what I look like? I look like those guys on the TV ads that are like, they're like, have you been in an accident?
Right.
I will help you sue them and get your money. You know, that guy?
Right. John Hollinger for the people.
Yeah.
It's a miracle none of us had big TV careers.
Yeah, I got a lot of radio bookings right after this.
It's funny, that background is exactly what my house looks like.
God.
David's holding his face with a facial expression that I've never seen him do not on TV. Like that's like see that crinkle right here? He doesn't do that. Like I've seen that before too. It's when I'm trying to look intelligent. It's really, listen, I'm on with you two. I have to pretend as best I can to be mildly smart. Should I be a little worried that you don't dress like that for this show?
No. Do you want me to?
No.
I'm not sure. I don't have that suit won't fit me anymore. I can tell you that.
Oh, yeah. I was joking earlier. So my mom, when I was that age, used to always say, "Hey, Henry, like you shouldn't wear your glasses when you do these things." So I would not wear them. And then I got older and wrinklier and uglier, and she's just like, "You should wear your glasses when you go on in the media."
Have you considered a full face mask? Yeah.
Actually, yes.
Yeah, that brings up another point. To John, you're famous as like a smart, numbers-driven guy, but underrated as a comedian. Judy, can we show the little tweet that I linked in that document?
I noticed it right away too, Henry, when he did.
That's great. I love this. Best advice in 4 words or fewer.
Always finished by you. Yeah. There's a long list of Hollinger in quotes, yes.
Anyway, John, how are you?
Underrated comedian.
It's been a wild little bit. You live in a part of Georgia which has a terrible police chief, apparently. How's everything going? Are you okay?
I'm okay. Yeah, things are actually okay here. So, you know, we'll see. Just hiding out from humanity like everyone else and waiting for whatever's next. So excited for the NBA to restart though. Hopefully they can pull this off safely.
Did you get to vote?
Yeah. So we have always voted by mail for several years. It's easy to request an absentee ballot here and just send it in. It's no excuse absentee ballots in Georgia. So I'm amazed that more people don't do that. But it's like anything. It's like Christmas shopping, right? Like, you know, it's coming, but it's still like, oh wait, it's the 24th. I haven't bought anything. Like, so.
Are you worried that your vote isn't counting or someone else is stealing it and changing the answers?
No, I mean, we had vote by mail when I lived in Oregon too. Like it's
exactly,
you know,
okay.
I mean, why would that be any more susceptible than a hackable machine, I guess.
Have you not listened to the president, John?
Or a fake ID. Been a few of those going around.
Okay, let's go down that rabbit hole, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been quoting Adam Silver's line, "The data, not the date," for which I think we should build a statue in your honor. But how are we doing? How are we doing on the data, not the date in the NBA?
Yeah. Not great. I mean, it's definitely leveled off nationwide. But it hasn't really gone away either. So there's still this risk that's out there. And I think there's this sense, I mean, not just in the NBA, I think in humanity, they're like, well, we've waited long enough. Like, let's go, you know? Mm-hmm. And which you just worry what the implications of that might be, 3-4 months down the road. Again, it's like a slow motion disaster, right? That's what it was in March, where you could see where the curve was going to, but that it wasn't going to get there until April, even though we basically stopped doing stuff in the middle of March. So in the NBA's case, I mean, it does have some things in its favor. I mean, they can control the environment. There is enough testing now, which was a key fail, obviously, during the first wave of this. And they're dealing with a population that's generally not at risk. So those are three advantages, but still containing an outbreak is still a difficult proposition that's going to require some real, like from everybody, from the league down to the players, is going to require some real cooperation and some real willingness to do things they normally wouldn't do.
You host a podcast with Nate Duncan. Nate Duncan has a different podcast that's just about coronavirus.
Yeah. It's like 6 degrees of podcast here. So you have a podcast with Nate Duncan now about coronavirus. Yes.
I learned some things listening to you two so in addition to the laundry list of worries I've been writing about and talking about, I've added a new one that comes from you two, which is, I'm just going to quote Nate a little bit here. So a new infection, the first 2 or 3 days, the chance of positive tests are close to nil. Days 3 and 4, you have a 50% chance of testing positive with a 30% false negative rate.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little messy. Yeah. And then days 4 and 5, you can be transmitting, and there's not as much chance of catching the infection with a test. Maybe only a day or two of transmission when you're not detecting it, says Nate. So playing every other day. He said a little optimistically, you would only be exposing 1 or 2 teams in that window. But I was like, it's kind of a lot of people. Then, okay, so that's enough. Okay, baseline worry. And then you, John, added, with the number of tests they're doing, they'll have 20 false positives every day? Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, I didn't think about what.
Yeah.
And you kind of downgraded it, but what the hell? That's a lot of problems.
Yeah. So they definitely need a strategy for, if there's a positive test, you have to do another test right away. Yeah. And then back-to-back false positives, right? Now you're getting into a more of a highly improbable area where it's like, okay, actually you do probably have this. But I do suspect there's going to be every single day, there's going to be a wave of like, okay, we have to retest the positives and see who's actually positive among these people.
Do we know what tests they're using and how long it's going to take to get those answers back?
No.
My presumption is that they're testing at night so that they can have results in the morning. That to me would be the logic of testing at night, because on all these tests, they're not immediate turnaround. Right. But if you can have it in 12 hours, you can stop guys from going to the gym together. And, the time period that you're losing is the time period where a guy's probably just going to be in his room anyway. So, so that's probably the least risky time. From what I understand, they're going to be able to do it without the super intrusive,
nasal swab,
shoving it all the way up, deep into your cerebellum through your nose. So it's going to be a lighter
system. I wasn't sure how that worked.
a lighter touch than that is my understanding.
Right.
I have a million concerns and we've talked about them too much, but like, it seems like to the extent like the different forces in this negotiation have weighed in, they're all weighing in on like, let's not have coronavirus inconvenience us too much, right? Like we definitely want pop there and we don't want the test to hurt. And at some point I'm like, no, you want good results. You want not to get the coronavirus. That's what we want, right? Like,
everything is a negotiation with the Players Association. So it's obviously an easier sell if you're able to do a test that isn't super annoying every single day. So, you kind of have to pick your battles a little bit.
Well, your point about testing at night makes complete sense, just because nothing else is happening when they go to sleep for the world. But if someone tests positive at 8 p.m., they've not been isolated up until 8 p.m., right?
Yeah.
They're with
so obviously,
all day long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they're in day 5.
Yeah.
Right.
At some point, yeah.
They've been exposed like 5 days before. So somebody else in the bubble, if this is 2 weeks in, somebody else in the bubble exposed them 5 days before. And you got to go find all those people, right? Like everybody who's touched the person who infected them, right? Now, everybody's being tested, so presumably you are finding them. But it's not that day you're worried about. It's the whole chain, right? It's like, where did it come from, right? You got to find all that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although, what's funny is the player-to-player transmission, based on the examples that we had before the league shut down,
right,
might not be as severe or as frequent as you might suspect. I was really surprised that only 2 people on the Utah Jazz
We
tested
talked about
positive,
this.
for instance.
Yeah, Rudy, they're on the plane and only Donovan got it. They were
On the
together for a
plane,
couple of
in
days.
the locker room.
Right.
And like, I mean, I was in the Utah Jazz locker room on March 8th in Boston. And that Boston locker room is tight, and there were a lot of people in there. And I don't know any media people who were there who were positive. Maybe there was, I don't know, but nobody I know. And like I said, only 2 people from the team. You don't really hear anything about like other staff from the team. So for whatever reason, maybe the basketball environment isn't like a super spreader environment. I mean, that would seem to be the evidence, at least. So, but it's tough to totally say. I wouldn't say that's something I would bank on either, right? Like, but we have a limited amount of data that maybe the amount of spread is the spread rate is low enough that you can contain it when you catch a positive.
Maybe. There's a weird, like, the role of the medical community here is a little weird to me. So it's like, okay, you got a positive test for the player, and now we're worried about false positives, as we just discussed. So then a doctor, a nurse, somebody has to say, like, basically, we're doing further follow, maybe a different test, whatever you do. But at some point, they're going to say, okay, now you're safe to run out there and do something that no doctor on planet Earth says is safe to do right now. You know what I mean? Like, nobody says you can play basketball. Nobody. There's not one doctor who says you can play basketball now.
You made the point, Henry, on Skeets' podcast the other day where, as John, you just talked about the player association is meeting with this, that, and the other. Where's the scientists in those meetings? Where's the doctors in those meetings? That's what Henry said the other day. Be nice to know we're talking to those people too, right?
I say a lot of crap, David. It's okay.
I'm sure John is thinking those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Reasonable people are, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's an unprecedented situation. It was one of the reasons that I thought, like, the league spent too much time, in my opinion, or too much energy and focus on messing around with different playoff systems and, you know, what teams are we going to have? Like, the first thing is to get the testing environment and, like, the first do no harm part, right? You really want to get that one nailed down. This is a completely unprecedented situation. And not only that, but you're dealing with a completely unprecedented logistics situation, which I think people have really underestimated in terms of, like, just what we would do to get a team to summer league took a tremendous amount of planning all through the year and dealing with logistics and jumping through various hoops that people don't typically think about. And to do that times 22 teams and to do it for a much more extended period and add this testing component on top of it and try to do it all with social distancing when you're not testing these guys, like, it just adds layers and layers of complexity on top of that. So was really hoping that the league's, I guess, attention would be on that first. Maybe it was, and they're just, you know, it just didn't leak out because it wasn't exciting, but it just felt like they were spending a lot of energy dealing with stuff that didn't really matter at the end of the day. Like, you know, basically in terms of how we'll look back in the league 5 years from now, right? Like, who gives a shit who got the 8th seed, right? Like, that's not the thing anyone will remember about this season. You know, make sure that everyone who participates is able to walk away, right? Like, that should be, like, the number one thing.
I mean, we early in the lockdown, we talked about, like, the Lakers and Clippers are already in the same town, right? And, you know, if we just had conference finals with 4 teams, right, it would just be, dissatisfying in a profound way. But you'd only be flying, maybe only one team would have to get on planes to do the Eastern and Western Conference finals, right? And then obviously the finals would have to be somewhere. But I don't know. It strikes me that, yeah, it does seem a little bit like the procedure migrated a little bit to what would ensure the most TV revenue as opposed to
and I think just making some people happy too. Like, there's no reason for the Wizards and Suns to be there. Like, can we be honest about this? Like, but you know.
So who is that? That's like a Ted Leonsis favor? Like, who is that? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I guess, yeah. I don't know if they
Yeah.
were going to be upset if they didn't get there, and they also wanted to do a play-in the East, so
Right.
they were just like, "Can we find some team that's at least halfway, like not
You,
a total
no, not
embarrassment,
you.
right?"
The question I'm wondering about, John, is are you going to go into the bubble, and maybe more importantly, do you think there's a good chance you'll get decent coffee inside the bubble?
I think your second concern is the key one that will probably dictate
I know
what happens. Yeah. Now, I am close enough that I could drive down, in which case, I can bring down my own beans, my own grinder, and just be self-contained. So that's definitely an option. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know what the setup for media is going to be yet. So I'm just playing it by ear and seeing. And I don't know what the situation in Central Florida is going to be yet either. I mean, I know Florida has seen an increase in cases lately, David. I don't know where. I mean, Florida geographically is a large state. I don't know where they're concentrated, but that's definitely something to monitor too.
There are not a lot of cases it's Osceola County, I think, right, David?
Yeah.
That's not right. Not a lot of cases there, but it's surrounded by counties that do have a lot of cases. All right, John, I want you to talk. I've been thinking about this. I mean, maybe nobody cares. If you're going to go in the bubble, you're going to be staying at an NBA designated hotel for a while, right? So this is going to be 2 months of $300 a night, right? Mm-hmm. Now suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, think about this for the whole league. Disney and the NBA have a giant complicated relationship, but like they're going to take over a Disney hotel for 1,000 people for months.
Yeah.
Is that something where Disney just throws it in to like they're paying the NBA for rights, or like, you know what I mean? At some point this deal's so complicated. I'm like, who pays who in the end here? Is the NBA doing Disney a favor? Is Disney doing the NBA a favor? Like with all the hosting of it? What are your thoughts on that?
Who's doing who a favor at the end of the day? Yeah. I mean, these TV companies, they need some real sports content, right? Like they're showing tape games from 1997 is only going to do so much. Like you're just not going to achieve high ratings that way.
My DVR's just sure I want to see them all too. It's like, yeah, we're recording all this for you. I'm like, I don't need to see
the intelligent DVR.
Yeah. Like, no, I don't need Kings game from the 94.
Yeah, right.
No.
Kings Pistons from 4 years ago. Hey, yes, you need this.
It's kind of sad.
I almost wonder if TV needs the league almost as much or more than the league needs the TV, but they definitely both need each other pretty badly because the league needs to get back out there, and it's not just between them and ESPN, it's between the regional sports networks too,
right?
Where they're trying to make good on their deals where they promised them 70 games, and so there are different financial partners involved here too. So it's complicated. At the end of the day, I'm gonna say though that the league needs Disney more than Disney needs the league. I mean, Disney has other leagues, like they have Major League Soccer coming there, but the NBA, like this is probably by far their best option.
Yeah, interesting. So they're paying for that hotel, is what you're saying?
I think they're going to be paying for the hotel.
Yeah, Disney's got revenue streams too. Hey, so John, I was talking to Henry about this yesterday. How valuable is data from this season now? Like, I mean, obviously to some degree we look at records and everything, but does it matter that the Clippers won 8 of 9 but lost to the Lakers back in March? And juxtaposition to that question is when you're with the Grizzlies, for example, what did it really matter that first month? Were you ever worried about, oh my God, or you just know, all right, things have to take place and then we'll see what our team looks like, 5-6 weeks down the road?
So the answer to your second question is everyone who works in the league is in a constant state of panic about their team, even if they're undefeated. Okay. Right. So it's this sort of probably unhelpful paranoia. At the same time, there's a knowledge in the back of your mind that you really probably shouldn't start worrying until Christmas. I mean, we had that was really brought home to me my second year in Memphis, we started the year 10-15. We had multiple injuries, and people were like, "Oh, it's over for Memphis and all that." And we ended up winning 50 games, got the 7 seed, took Oklahoma City to 7 games in the first round with Durant and Westbrook. And so since then, I've kind of chilled out about overreacting to what happens that first month, especially. And actually, my last 2 years there, it was the opposite, where we started out really well and then, But
I'm sorry, what was that noise?
Yeah, you raise an interesting point though, because we don't know what these teams are going to look like when we come back, and they might be the same, but they might be very different. So how relevant is what happened that first Laker Clipper game on, I think it was opening day, right? How relevant is that to now them playing almost a year later?
Right.
In this completely different environment where players' bodies and conditioning may have changed pretty significantly in that time frame too. So that's the other thing that probably makes it less translatable. I mean, it's still basketball, but you do wonder how much you really should weigh that when there's such a time interval in between.
Yeah, they'll be 10 days short of what Kawhi's break was between his last game with the Raptors and his first game with the Clippers. That's a long damn time.
Wow.
And so just like you said, the data people know, when we get around Christmas, we start having enough evidence to kind of get an idea of where this train track's going and where do we need to change it, right? Most of those teams will be out of the playoffs already at that point.
Oh yeah.
That's why
you're reacting to much shorter samples. Yeah, you're like a college coach at this point, right? Like, Oh, we're 2-4 in conference. Like, the season's over. Yeah.
But I guess it depends what you're trying to do with the data, right? So if we're like, at the ESPN, we wouldn't release PER until Christmas or so, right? Because we didn't.
Yeah, we give it some time. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But if the Lakers come out and win their first game by 40, that's interesting, right? I mean,
it is like, because you're also coming in with like a prior that they're a good team. So if they establish that right away, you're like, oh, okay, yeah,
yeah, that seems pretty good. So John, obviously the most important question, since I'm a Blazers fan and you worked for the Grizzlies, and you live in Portland, is who's going to be the 8th seed? This is the most important thing. You mocked this point earlier, but it's the World Championship to me.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because we don't know what they're going to do about the schedule yet. There was discussion that they would play their next 8 games on their schedule, and they could tweak a couple things to basically make that work.
Well, the teams that aren't on that schedule anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what
if you have the Hawks and Bulls upcoming, then obviously you don't get to play them. The interesting thing is that Memphis could eliminate a play-in entirely. They're up 3.5 games on these teams. So if they finish 1 game better in this 8-game season than their rivals, then they're free and clear and there's no play-in at all. Portland, I think, can probably put together the best team at this point with Nurkic and Collins. I mean, their force just killed them the whole season. I mean, even Melo having him back was a great story, and he was better than what they had, but it was still pretty bad, So
yeah. Are you saying he wasn't the answer?
He was not. He was.
Iverson's the answer.
He was the answer. He was the best answer available at that time.
Right. He's a better answer.
When you're picking up street free agents to start for you, you got some issues. Yeah. So, I think, we'll see what kind of condition Nurkic is in. Even so, like, Portland to me isn't like a super team, and they're going to have to do they got some work to do just to get to 9, hold off. Sacramento actually was playing pretty well. Yeah. Hold off the Pelicans with Zion. The one interesting with the Pelicans is, like, are they really going to go 0-60 with Zion here coming off of this long layoff, or are they going to have to pull back, put minutes restrictions on him, maybe not have him play all 8 games? I don't know. That to me is a really interesting question that will have a lot to say about whether New Orleans can hold on to that 9th position.
Well, and is Brandon Ingram going to play? I mean, he did have clotting issues, and this is a disease that does impact your blood.
Well, that's an interesting point that I had not considered.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an interesting point, because the other reason for him not to play, obviously, is he knows he's getting a max, right? So,
yeah, right. Oh, great. I hadn't thought about that. Right. Right. Why risk it?
Yeah. So there's an element of that too, but.
Yeah, this is so crazy just trying to predict these things.
So it sounds to me like there'll be a sort of regular season game, like, some Grizzlies, Blazers, Pelicans, Grizzlies, something which will probably end up being absolutely critical. We won't know at the time that'll be the one. Right?
Yeah. Well, then obviously the presumption is that Memphis would probably hang on to 8, because you're not going to make up 3.5 games over 8. But so whoever ends up in 9 would have to beat them twice then at the end.
Right. And it's just not that likely. So you're betting Grizzlies, sounds like.
They would be the way to bet. I'd bet on them over the field. Now the question is, but would you put their odds over 50%, or would you take the field over the Grizzlies?
Well, I know. I saw a funny thing where, like, Darren Fox tweeted yesterday, like, he screenshotted some ESPN analysis, which left the Kings out entirely.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's
no respect for the Sacramento Kings.
Do you even remember why the Kings started playing better late?
There were a few different things that went on. I mean, Fox was playing awesome, which was a big factor. They started bringing Buddy off the bench. They changed that up a little bit. They traded Dedmon. They started playing Giles at 5. I think it was just a bunch of small things, but Fox to me was the biggest. I thought Fox was fantastic.
He's so
that last month or two before the season shut down.
Yeah.
John, I want to maybe get you in trouble. Hopefully not. Just move right along if this is uncomfortable. But I've been thinking about, like, why am I wound up about the league's protocols, the way they're going to apply evidence and science in the bubble and to keep people safe? And I'm thinking, like, subconsciously it's because, they don't have the best track record of, like, applying evidence in decision making in the league office. Do you care to comment on that? I can just talk more if you want and keep it trouble if you want. That's fine. Am I crazy to say that, you think? Do you want to work in the league again, John? Go.
No, that's a tough one. They do it. I think the thing that the word I would use more is that they tend to be more reactive than proactive, and this is a thing that screams for proactive. So that's where I worry. The tendency has been to react to the thing, to say, like, oh wow, that was really screwed up how we were doing our playoff seedings, and people were tanking in order to face the Nuggets in the first round. Let's maybe change that,
Yeah.
From 15 years ago, for example. But I've always felt like there's this, like, reactive element that, like, they'll react to things that a lot of people saw coming as problems, but they won't attack them until the problem manifests itself. So I'm hoping that won't be the case this time.
I mean, we don't have time for that. Honestly, they can't, like, change the bubble mid-bubble.
Oh no, it completely torpedoes their season. Yeah.
Actually, one of the little ones that all the positions in basketball changed, and you wrote basically, like, oh, the traditional big man doesn't make sense in all-star voting, right? And to me, they were like, oh yeah, we should change.
Yeah. There was this whole controversy because it was the whole thing with the Spurs wanting to list Tim Duncan as a forward, and it's like, well, he plays 5 for you guys, and, like, he's
how this works.
this whole weird thing, and where a guy gets listed on the All-Star ballot, and they finally did. I guess they do 3 guards, 2 bigs now. Is that what they're doing? I haven't looked at an All-Star ballot in a while, because when I worked for a team, I just did not give one single.
Yeah.
Your mic dropped out there for a second.
Yeah. About the All-Star ballot. But
do you think, how much impact will it be or not be that there's no home court advantage? And then connected to that is, are we going to get any data that's meaningful regarding that going forward, considering how few games will be and the fact they've been off for 4 months probably even playing in the first place. In other words, what if teams played each other during the regular season and then they play each other in the postseason? Does it really matter considering there's so much time off that all of a sudden there's no home court advantage? And what are you learning from the value of that?
So you don't have the travel, which is interesting.
Right, that too.
You don't have the crowd, although maybe they'll pipe in noise or something. The
Like the
thing
Nets?
to me,
Sorry.
the thing to me is that so games 1 through 6 of a series, it should be the same, right? Like the net impact should be the same versus having 3 home, 3 away. But I think it does make it easier for the road team or underdog to win a series overall because they're not facing this Game 7 situation where Game 7 is where the biggest advantage historically is conveyed to the home court team. And you're not going to have that this time around. So I think in a 7th game scenario, and then I think it'll be harder for bad teams to extend the series because some of them were able to kind of hang around in a lot of these 1-8, 2-7 series and take them maybe 6 games because they were able to like eke out a 3-point win in games 3 and 4 with the help of the home court advantage. And they're not going to have that now.
Do you remember this study about soccer referees would extend a game if there was a bigger crowd? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like this is a while ago now. This is early Sloan days.
Yeah, I remember the study you're talking about. Yeah, and there's been some thought that referees are influenced by home court in playoff games too. The league has worked hard to probably reduce that from what it was. I mean, no, in all seriousness, home court advantage in the league has declined. So, one of the things that may be a cause is that refereeing maybe has become more neutral as we have more objective information to evaluate with officials and that they've tried to standardize officiating more. So for that, I think that may be a legitimate thing.
I guess it matters to David's question, right? Is like, wait, what was that home court advantage? Was it like the psychology of the crowd working on the referee, which would be totally in keeping with how humans are wired and work in other situations, right? Or is it, people play better because they sleep in their own bed or whatever? You know what I mean? In which case, we'll find out. I guess it'll be interesting to answer that question.
It'll be you guys. Well, if you're not there, it won't be so easy to get a feel. Both of you guys have spent a lot of time talking to athletes. When you're down in a series and have to go then on the road for a game, that the spirit required, the belief required so that we're going to do this is harder to manufacture. That won't be the case anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, but you're not going. Players are going to say what they're supposed to say, but you guys know what I mean. You get a feel like these guys know they're done, and I don't know that they'll know that necessarily, knowing that hey, we're right here. We don't have to go back anywhere. We're here. They have no home court advantage, whatever. I feel like that just adds to the variability, which is good for the worst team.
Yeah.
It creates variability, helps them.
Yeah. The I had a really smart, interesting point that I was going to make. I don't know what it was though.
We're so much older than we were in that video. we were young and smarter then.
Judy, can you just credit John with one brilliant point on that one?
I want to tell a brilliant John Hollinger story very quickly.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It's very quick. So this was many years ago. Well, you can figure out how long ago in a second. I got a call one night right before he was about to publish like one of the most popular things we ever published at ESPN, which is his initial player profiles of every single guy playing in the league.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, sure.
So John called me one night. I never do this at night. Like at 7 o'clock, I was watching TV with my wife. Like our kids were, I think it was like 2011 maybe. And John said, David, I'm going through all the guys. There's a guy that I just don't have a feel for data-wise. Do you remember who that player was, John?
I don't.
It was Danny Green because he had been cut from the Cavs.
Oh.
He said, I just don't have a feel for him because the data just isn't there. Give me some thoughts. So I talked to John up because I actually watched him a lot in college. I give my thoughts. I hang up. And I said to Chrissy, she's like, wow, it's cool that John wanted your opinion. I said, no, what's cool is there's 450 fucking players he's writing about, and only one did he not have nailed down. There's 80 guys I couldn't have told you a thing about, including how to spell their names. But Danny Green being from North Carolina, I knew a little bit. That's people. You weren't just doing data. You were gaining insight from your data. I used to love. That was a great day for me too, just reading all your stuff. Are you going to do that, you think, for next year?
I want to do something for next year. I just don't know how much time I'm going to have. Yeah. That's the problem. The off season could be so compressed that I don't know exactly what I'm going to be able to do yet. So we just have to see, and talk with my editors at The Athletic, obviously, and we'll, figure out what the best way is to kind of launch people into the next season out of the season that ends. But we just, that was a bear of a project, and it required a lot of time, and I just don't know how much time we're going to have. So that's probably the biggest limitation I see.
Do you have a favorite for this year? Like going into this crazy postseason, do you have a team you think they have the biggest advantage?
I mean, I think Milwaukee still, just because they have the best player. I think they figured out more about what works around that. Kawhi is the one guy who really has been able to guard Giannis by himself and take away a lot of what he creates for other people. So a finals against the Clippers would be really interesting for the Bucks. But I think Milwaukee has to be the favorite. They've been so dominant this year, and they have a lot of different ways to get you besides Giannis. When you look at Middleton's done, you look at they got DiVincenzo coming along. They got Lopez bombing away, but they can play. They can also go really they could play Giannis at 5 and go really small. We haven't really seen them do that, but that's a weapon they have. I think Bledsoe's been really good this year. He's a guy that kind of got played off the floor a little in the postseason last year, so it's going to be an interesting postseason for him. But Milwaukee, to me, still has to be the favorite.
David's pick is going to be on Troop tomorrow.
It's not Milwaukee.
It's not Milwaukee.
If his pick is the Blazers, I'm going to say that there's some bias introduced into that.
No, that's
outside
not bias,
sources.
John. That's just we're just trying to be objective here. We're trying to be evidence driven.
Your argument is very good, obviously, and one of the fascinating things that this postseason, or only this postseason, hopefully will ever bring, is just the unknowns that we never normally deal with, other than who's hurt, right? Which is something we always talk about in the postseason. The unknowns this time. I mean, Zion could come back 300 pounds. I'm a huge Zion Williamson fan, but his body.
And he's a huge Zion
You're
Williamson.
a fan of huge Zion Williamson, or
right? His body is prone to gaining weight.
Yeah,
if you're not really on top of it.
Yeah. Luka's kind of built like that too.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Luka really had got himself. It's one of the things people didn't write too much about this year. His game was so incredible, but he had changed his body too. He wasn't LeBron, right? He's also very young, but he got lean. He got leaner, significantly so, and it's quite incredible. So, we just have no idea what teams are going to look like. I mean, basically, the team that's done the best job with their Zoom calls has a big advantage. That statement's never been said before,
John, I'm noticing a thing that so the earliest days of Sloan, the earliest days of Daryl Morey and analytics in the NBA, the buzzwords were they had 10 analysts, right? So 10 people, 10 Ed Kupfers or whatever, who are trying to figure out where Ron Artest should stand when he shoots, right? This kind of stuff. But over time, what happened was they found that the margin was more in the CBA, right? Like they ended up the trickery, how they got James Harden, or all those weird. Remember those unusual contracts they were signing people to, so that signing restricted free agents to, so that the other team couldn't match, right? This kind of stuff.
Like they did that with Omer Ashik. Yeah,
and there was another one too, right? Who was the other one?
Jeremy Lin.
And that so basically like. Because of where the profits were in building your team, it ended up making a lot more sense to just master the CBA lawyer stuff rather than like basketball stuff.
Yeah.
And I've noticed so we work together and we read you every day and there was a lot of basketball stuff. But once you went to work for the Grizzlies, come back now, you've followed a similar arc. I feel like you're often talking about contract types, or
Yeah.
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, mastering the CBA is a necessary but not sufficient condition to win in the NBA. I am amazed how many people work in the league without knowing the CBA, because to me it's like not knowing the rules of basketball almost. Like you're playing a game and these are the rules of them, and to not know them seems to me to be horrifically negligent. But c'est la vie, some people don't. But on the, like, for teams as a whole, I think having that expertise is really important, and having that expertise in high enough places that you know instantly when to leverage the advantages that you see and go, okay, we can do that. Because sometimes, the draft night or trade deadline or whatever, you're having to make these decisions quickly. So you have to already know what every implication is on your cap and what the rules are and how to take advantage of situations. So, so no, I feel like we did a couple little neat tricks like that in Memphis.
Oh, can you tell us one, please?
Oh, I mean, nothing major, but like we traded for a guy who basically was just a dead money, non-guaranteed contract, so that we could get Matt Barnes, right? When we did that, we got Matt Barnes by trading for Luke Ridnour first, because we had a trade exception that was big enough for Luke Ridnour, but not for Matt Barnes. And then we traded Luke Ridnour for Matt Barnes. So that was how we were able to get him that year. And I mean, we probably don't make the playoffs if we don't have Matt Barnes that year. So we did a deal with Wayne Selden where it was instead of, we couldn't sign him to a long-term deal. A lot of guys, you sign like the quote unquote hinky specials, the 4-year minimum or whatever. Right. We couldn't do that because we were out of exception money. So we signed him to a 2-year minimum with a team option on the second year. Why do we do that? So we declined the option the day before free agency. Then the first minute of free agency, signed him to a new contract for 2 more years. So, just little stuff like that where you try to take advantage of it as much as you can. And, fortunately it actually worked out sort of my last year and into this year with the Conley trade, and like the exceptions we had built up by trading Jarrell Martin, by trading JaMychal Green, then they turned into a massive one with the Mike trade. And then they're able to get Iguodala, a 1st-round pick, DeAnthony Melton, and 2nd-round pick from Phoenix, and really take advantage of it that way. So being able to do smart stuff like that with the cap, it's hugely important at the margins, because that there are ways to take advantage of the rules to really maximize your roster, and the teams that fail to do that just leave money on the table.
Well, I'm glad you're writing about it, because for a fan, I mean, this is sort of what I do for a living, I guess, and I don't understand it. And for regular fans, I don't know how they ever would. And there are times where there's a transaction and like to you, it's obvious why this happened. Yeah. And to me, I'm like, I don't know. Like there's someone they're going to cut, and it's going to let something else happen, and whatever. Until John tells me, I can't explain it.
Cash in a protected second, and you're like, what?
If you were starting college, John, over again, and I'm assuming you would choose Virginia once again, what would you study knowing what you know now, separate from what your most talented academic, subjects were? Like what should you be studying if you were just starting college and wanted to help run an NBA team one day?
See, I'm biased. I studied econ, and I still think economics is really valuable and has a lot to teach people. Yeah. But man, the way the world is going, I mean, computer programming is just so valuable. And even to not be the programmer yourself, but to know how it works and what works, like that would be the other one that I would think would be a hugely valuable thing to have in your skill set.
Epidemiologist, anyone?
Yeah.
All right, we have a bunch of questions.
More seriously though, because of all that's going on with player health and whatnot, like there is, would some knowledge of physiology and some background in biology. I mean, that'd probably be helpful too.
Just what Henry and I talked about the other day.
Biomechanics. Yeah.
You're gonna send me the P3 stuff, Henry.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I didn't send you that. Sorry. This is like a team meeting for us. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions. One of them, I think we're going to maybe have a video of a moment. Should we do this? Here we go. Here we go.
Oh man.
So it seems to me so far that wins and losses have been the way that most of these panels have defined success. And I'm curious, coming from a fan base in Golden State where, yes.
2 times, I guess.
The aesthetics seem to be a huge part of the fan experience there, and it seems to be that a lot of people have noticed that, and that's kind of a major part of the fans investing in the team, although they may not do it as far as, you know, merchandise, they do it in showing up. What do you see as the future of analytics as far as how teams evaluate the aesthetics and how that might affect like their profit margins and all that?
When you say aesthetics, do you...
So I think what happened there is I think that the person asking that question is actually in this chat right now and would like your answer.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. David Persaico asked this question in 2010, and he said that John never got a chance to answer it, so he was hoping to get an answer now.
That's interesting because the aesthetics of being a Golden State Warriors fan have changed pretty significantly since 2010.
Because they're ugly now?
I mean, they may have changed a second time, right?
Right.
I don't know because I've never really spent a lot of time on that, honestly. And there are people who do spend a lot of like ticket sales, like they do all kinds of stuff with analytics. And I just don't like, that's a black box to me. It's like speaking French. Like I just don't know. So I hate to disappoint you after waiting all these years, but I'm not sure I have a lot to offer on this particular question.
Okay. There you go, David. Okay, Bilal has a question. If a team used a disabled player exception and that player is healthy by the restart, would they be able to play?
They can play. Yep.
They can play. Okay. And what do we know? There's some discussion about Jokic. Was he home? Did he go to stay in Denver? Do we know what he did?
There are reports that he's in great shape, which I'll believe him when I see him.
He had gotten in much better shape over the course of the season.
Over the course of this season, he definitely had. Yes,
really heavy.
Yeah.
John, do you think? So you mentioned, like Brandon Ingram shouldn't play, maybe just because he has a max. What about the kid from Israel that's playing for Maccabi, come up here for the Israeli championship, who is projected top 10?
That's interesting because. Denny Avdia, because Killian Hayes has already shut it down in Germany.
Right.
Like Germany's playing and he's not. LaMelo Ball and RJ Hampton obviously shut it down a long time ago. So he's probably the one guy who, could have a decision to make. Maybe he feels like he can improve his draft stock by playing. He still has a contract there, so he'll get paid too, which is not nothing.
Could he help him? I mean, I think I like him more than you. But I've talked to some guys on the team who just rave about him, and these are guys that typically don't rave about young players.
How old is he? He's 18 or 19? How old is he?
Yeah,
he's either 18 or 19.
I think he's still 18. He won the under 18 championship and then the under 20 championship when he was not of age, even he was younger. But he doesn't shoot great, and that's a big scary point.
Yeah, the biggest thing that's probably going to work against him is that he's playing in Israeli league games, not in Euro League games. Right. So if he was able to go out against FC Barcelona and score 25, I think people would be like, okay. There's a limited ability to impress people when you're playing against,
Haifa,
Hapoel Jerusalem or,
But then there are those are the hard ones, right? That's Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum too, right? It's like the same kind of, right?
The small school thing you're saying? Or?
Yeah, just like when you don't play against Super League competition day in and day out, then either you're amazing or you're not, and we don't really know till later, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have the tape of him playing against higher level competition in the Euro League, and if he was able to improve upon that tape, I think that would be an opportunity for him to improve his draft stock. But I just question how much of an impression he can make playing in Israeli League games.
Okay, next another question from Devin. What motivated you to come up with PER?
Just as a fan, I just wanted to find an apples to apples way to compare players and was really frustrated that all we had was like points per game. So, and I had read all Bill James's books when I was younger. So I was really interested in finding a way to apply what he did in baseball to basketball.
Yeah. Are you glad you did?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got a pretty decent career out of that, so it worked out okay.
Say hello to Gerard Hector. He's in Paris.
Wow. What's up?
In Paris.
Definitely not in Paris, in New York City, but so been reading your work for a long time, PR and all these stats that I use. So thank you for making me smarter when I talk to people and or educate people when I write. I have a question for you. When you transitioned into front office work and sort of working with the Grizzlies, because that's just so different, obviously, right? From media and from creating models and formulas. What was something that happened or just an encounter experience that you were like, you were surprised by that, for whatever reason, the numbers and that way to look at things it doesn't work here in this particular instance?
A place where the numbers just didn't work.
Well, maybe not the numbers didn't work, or something about the human side of it that was just, it defied the numbers, or,
I think it was harder to change how we played than I realized. We were like sort of the dinosaur team there, right? And we didn't shoot a lot of threes. We played very slowly, and some of that worked to our advantage, but changing that, especially on the 3-pointers, it involved a lot more than just saying, hey, we should shoot more 3-pointers. Like there were so many levels stylistically and just in terms of where players are and to run our plays and how we want to do things, and getting the players themselves to buy in, because, when nobody else's center is shooting a 3, having Marc Gasol shoot a bunch of 3s is revolutionary.
But
right?
that's the one, right? Like if young Marc Gasol could have shot as many 3s as old Marc Gasol.
Yes.
Holy crap, right?
Yeah. It would have made a difference for us, definitely. So, it wasn't just with him. I mean, it was other players too. We had other guys that easily could have taken a lot more 3-point attempts, and it just wasn't how people thought about the game in 2014 or whatever.
Zach Randolph, are you talking about?
Not so much Zebo. He played on a D'Antoni team and took some 3s, and let's maybe keep him on the block. But I think Darrell Arthur stretched out to 3 after we had him. I think Tayshaun, when we had him the last couple of years, he probably could have taken more than he did. Even Mike shot a lot more 3s as years went on from when I first got there. So it's just an overall thing. And it was the same trend league-wide. I mean, it wasn't just us. But it surprised me how hard it was to push that boulder along.
Is that because, although I'm sure you had a protocol in place for how you wanted to talk about changing it, is it because to relate to the coach wasn't buying it and so he wasn't selling it to them well? Because it's hard to get guys who make the NBA to change because they're like, I'm already here. Like,
it's all those things. And compounded. So there's resistance at all levels, right? So it just makes it, if it's 10% harder at each level, then your overall task is like 100% harder. Or that's probably terrible math, but that's kind of.
It goes to
just what we faced. But the guy behind you to your left with the beard, I'm a little worried about. I got to be honest.
Yeah,
it goes to something you said, John. It goes to something you said about people do panic early in the season, not like Europe where people get fired after one game. When I went to training camp with you guys in Nashville, I think it was Jaeger's first year.
Yeah,
he wanted to play fast.
Mm-hmm.
That was scrapped quickly.
Yeah. We started horribly because it wasn't just he wanted to play fast; he wanted to play differently too. Like there were like 3 different times where we started with the idea that we're going to have this very egalitarian Spursy, share the ball and everyone can be a decision maker type thing. And then you quickly realize that you actually need 5 good decision makers on the floor if you really want to do that. And if you don't have that, then then you got to stop being a democracy and just
wait. Who was it? Who was the weak link here?
Let's not get into that. But for us, I mean, we had one really good ball handler with Mike, so keeping the ball with him in the center of the floor was the thing that worked for us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always made the contention too that I love Nick Kalathis as what you're talking about, just a brilliant decision maker, a way better defender than people realize.
Yeah, that was the thing. His last year with us, he had the highest steal rate in NBA history for a player 6'6" or taller.
He was amazing.
Whoa, really?
He's one of the best players in Europe of all time.
Yeah.
Chose to stay there ultimately. But
his deal, he made more money because he was like a minimum or biannual exception guy in the NBA, and he was making $3-4 million in Greece, and getting to live pretty high on the hog out there and stuff. So there was just no point in him coming back. So that was basically it. He could have played in the NBA the last 5 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Every team has that story though, John. They all start in October and with the idea that, hey, we're gonna do this and this and this. And then by the 2 weeks into the season, they've scrapped it. It's very rare to see that change stick.
Yeah.
So John, when before you worked in the front office, you would occasionally, you're a nice guy, but occasionally you would just eviscerate something.
Right.
For instance, a Jeff Petrie trade here or there comes to mind. Right. There are others. And I think we would say that the league has generally gotten smarter now. Are there still transactions, draft picks, trades where you're just like, oh no, that's an L? Like, are there still just like,
yes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us?
I mean, certainly I think everyone reacted that way when Phoenix made that trade on draft night to go down from 6 to 11 just to get Dario Saric and then select Cameron Johnson. I think there's been, other mistakes. We might've been guilty of one or two of them ourselves that were, I think, even at the time, pretty clearly mistakes. So I don't think that's totally gone away, but I do think the league is definitely smarter than it used to be.
Yeah.
Probably the last real like LOL one was probably that Kings Sixers trade where they gave up the first round picks just to generate cap space, which they didn't even know what they were going to do with.
Yeah. I recently spent a little time. I haven't written about this yet, but the Gerald Wallace for Damian Lillard didn't pan out too well.
No, yeah. There was that one and the other one with the Celtics. Yeah, that the Nets. Yeah. Late Billy King era Nets. Yeah, had some real doozies. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everybody involved in that has a great story about how it wasn't them. Like the fingers are like this.
Yeah.
John, what makes player evaluation so hard?
You're trying to predict the future. I mean, that's the name of the game. You're trying to use past performance to predict the future, whether it's the draft or free agency and that's where the complication comes in, trying to evaluate who's going to keep themselves in top physical condition, who's going to work hard, who's going to, whose season was a fluke, whose season was a result of a real change in ability, who has the capacity to still get better, who had a shitty coach and maybe because of that has the ability to play better. So it's all those things. Again, just it's like the stock market, I guess. That's what makes that hard, right? You're trying to predict the future and you don't really know.
And you can't just buy mutual funds.
Yeah, that would be the way to go. 41 and 41 every year. Yeah.
All right, we are out of time. John, thank you so much. I know you
Thanks
got a lot
for
going
having
on. Yeah, super fun. We'll do it again.